Hey, what's going on, fam? So, just another quick video. I just want to discuss Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, the congresswoman from New York, and her recent racist pandering to a black crowd at Al Sharpton's National Action Network. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because when she did it, a lot of people called her out, including some white supremacist conservatives, but a lot of black people also called her out again. Also, people who aren't biased towards or the Democrat Party or liberals or black people who aren't fooled by the racist Democrats and liberals. And I want to talk about this because a lot of the white supremacists or suspected white supremacist Democrats or wannabe white supremacist Democrats are trying to defend this woman and say that she wasn't actually and excuse me for the cough, fam. She wasn't exactly doing some racist pandering. What she was actually doing was what we call code switching, which she was not. And I want to make this video to expose that she wasn't. So just to give you a little background, she's a congresswoman, like I said. She went to this event, this black event hosted by Al Sharpton. It wasn't really a black event, it was like a black political rally. And she got up on stage and she switched to this very stereotypical Southern black voice, black dialect that's very stereotypical, and a lot of black people don't talk like that. So for her to assume that we talk like that and to switch to that voice makes it even worse. But anyway, what I want to do to prove it is by playing two clips of her talking. I'm going to play the first clip of her being at the rally in that obviously racist pandering voice, and then I'm going to talk about, or then I'm going to play the clip of her on an interview with MSNBC with Chuck Todd that she did back on February 9th. And I want you to hear the inflection, the difference in the inflection in her voice. And then I'm going to show why what she was doing and switching her voice inflection was not code switching. It was, if anything, it was the exact opposite of code switching. It was just openly blatant racist pandering based on racist stereotypes about black people. And I just want to say, before I even get into the video, before I even play the clips, I made sure I called the conservatives white supremacists because they are, most of them, not all of them, but most of them are. And compared to the liberals, they're open white supremacists. Now, of course, the name of the game of white supremacy is to deny, deny, deny. So even conservatives deny their racism, but compared to the liberals, who also deny their racism, they're open racist. And I want to put that out there because I know a lot of people will say, oh, well, what about the conservatives? Or you must be a conservative sympathizer, or you sound like the conservatives, because a lot of white supremacist conservatives were calling her out. And I know that they were calling her out not because they care about black people, but because they're just using her open racism to further their own agenda, because they're Republicans and she's a Democrat. And so they see in a chance to attack a Democrat, especially over race. Conservatives have a fetish for attacking Democrats over race. So of course they jumped on it to attack her, and the white liberals want to point that out and say, oh, this is the conservative narrative, but it's not. It's black people's narratives, but it was just such obvious racism that even conservatives had the opportunity to take advantage of it, even though a lot of them don't give a damn about racism towards black people and can care less and actually encourage racism towards black people. They saw an opportunity with her open racism, right, to attack her. But anyway, I don't want to delay, and you know, we know that the name of the game with liberal racism is that Hillary hot sauce in my bag type pandering racism. Let me get on the stage and dance for these silly Negroes, not offer them any specific policies, any specific tangibles. I'm just going to get up on stage and dance for these Negroes, and that's all it's going to take to earn their vote, right? And that's basically sort of what Miss Ocasio-Cortez was doing, even though she's not running for a national office yet, so she's not necessarily pandering to black votes yet. But anyway, I just want to go ahead and play the clip, and then I'm going to go ahead and break it down a little bit. So here goes the first clip with her talking to Al Sharpton's group. And one moment here.
This is what building power looks like. This is what changing the country looks like. It's when we choose to show up and occupy the room and talk about the things that matter most, talking about our future. You know, Reverend, you bring up a funny anecdote, and I'm proud to be a bartender. Ain't nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with working retail, folding clothes for other people to buy. There is nothing wrong with preparing the food that your neighbors will eat. There is nothing wrong with driving the buses that take your family to work. This is what organizing looks like. This is what building power looks like.
All right, so y'all heard that. With the this is what building power looks like. This is what revolution looks like. Ain't nothing wrong with retail. Ain't nothing wrong with driving a bus. Okay, so as you can see, even I had to exaggerate my voice to put in that kind of inflection. And I'm black. And I even had to exaggerate my voice to put in that kind of inflection. Right? So let's go ahead and listen to Ms. Cortez's interview with Chuck Todd. We're just going to listen to a few seconds of it, and then I'll comment on that.
Well, I think there's two ways to talk about it. So one is, and again, we can use and still have an opportunity. I think here in this situation, I think there's still an opportunity to model what the correct way of navigating these waters look like. And so, for example, I'm Latina, and Latino Americans have a really interesting identity because, especially for me as a Puerto.
All right, so y'all hear that. So as you can see, when she was talking to Chuck Todd, a white man, she said, I am Latina. Like, she switched to this very borderline, fresh in America, just learned to speak English, still has a very strong Hispanic accent to her. Now, if anything, if she talked like that behind closed doors, Latina, Latino, like some sort of, Mexican or Hispanic, whatever you want to call it, Puerto Rican, she's Puerto Rican, that would be legitimate code switching, because that's the defense for her by the racists and the other people who are trying to bow down to her, is that, oh, she's code switching, and she's not code switching. Code switching is when people, non-white people, mainly black people, go into a professional setting and switch from their normal vernacular to a more standard English, quote-unquote, white-sounding voice. It is not, it would not be code switching for a black person to be talking proper at home and then get on work and start talking, yo cuz, yo son, yo shorty. Like, that wouldn't be code switching. That's the opposite of code switching. Code switching is when you switch to a certain voice in a professional environment to blend in, especially with the white people there or whomever there. It's normally when you're either in a the two primary times when black people do it is when they're working in customer service positions, or they're dealing with people on the job, usually higher ups or peers even possibly, in a professional setting. But overall, it's usually in a professional setting. It's not code switching to switch to an unprofessional voice, or what some people would term an unprofessional voice, in a professional setting. That's the opposite of code switching. It's when you switch to a professional voice in a professional setting, and then in an unprofessional setting you switch to your real voice, right? That is code switching, not what this woman is doing. Okay, and let me further break it down what she did. She went into a professional setting because, and I'm going to put some of the debunking of, or not some of the debunking, but some of the people supporting her, or not really some of the people, but one article in particular, it's from The Atlantic on Medium, on the platform Medium. And just for you guys, when I put the link in the description box, you're going to have to sign up with either a Google, if you don't have an account already, either with a Google account, a Facebook or Twitter account. It's very easy. All you have to do is click sign up with Google, sign up with Twitter, sign up with Facebook, and then you'll sign up for a Medium account, and then you can view the article. If you don't sign up for an account, you won't be able to view the whole article. So let me forewarn you of that. But this article is a suspected white supremacist defending her. And he was trying to say, along with some other people, which I'm going to read a tweet of somebody else defending her, is that she's code switching. And what they tried to say was that when you go into an unprofessional environment, you switch to when you get around your people, or when you get into an unprofessional environment, you switch to your real voice. and that's code switching, and all black people do that, and that's what he was trying to apply to her. And that's not true, because what this woman did, as you can see, well, number one, let me back up a little bit. So number one, this woman was not in an unprofessional setting. She was at a National Action Network political rally. She was there with Bernie Sanders and other people who are her political peers. For a politician, public appearances at political rallies, you are on the job. When Donald Trump was running for president and he was holding campaign rallies, he was not in his living room. He was not having a casual conversation with his friends. He was in a political professional setting. When you are a politician and you do political rallies, politician, political, those words correlate. You are in a professional setting. You are on the job, okay? Being on the job is not only being inside the office, inside your Congress office, all right? Because clearly when she was on MSNBC, she wasn't inside her congressional office, but she had a professional voice. She was at a rally, and a public rally, making a public appearance. Just like when she was on TV, she made a public appearance. But you can hear the difference in her voice depending on her audience. That's not code switching. That's pandering. That's not that's not code switching. That's pandering. When you switch to an unprofessional voice in a professional setting, you, especially as a politician, you are not code switching. You are pandering, and that's what she did. I just played the clip for you guys. Clearly, in one interview, she was talking normal, and then when she said the word Latina, she switched to the Latina. She switched from a somewhat standard English voice to Latina. I am Latina, right? And then when she got around black people, she sounded like some southern black woman, and she's in the north. And then that speaks of another thing. Speaking of that being a southern accent, one of the points that this article tried to make, that I'm gonna put a link in the description box, tried to say, oh, she was switching from, she was using the voice that people in the Bronx use, because there's an intense interaction between Latinos and black people ever since the 50s. And I don't even understand what quote unquote an intense interaction means. What the hell is an intense interaction, right? But let's just say that you're talking because maybe black people and Latino people lived in somewhat in the same communities, especially when Latinos first came to America. Number one, the accent she uses is a southern accent. So this white writer trying to say that that's a Bronx accent, that's not true. A Bronx accent, we've all heard a New York accent. Hell, I used to have one because I grew up in New York. It's, yo, I'm from New York, son. Yo, I'm from New York, kid. It's not the accent that she used. She used a southern accent. That is not a Bronx accent. That is not a North accent. All right, that is not an accent of most. Now, I'm not saying there are no people in New York that have that accent, but that's not the accent of the majority of people in New York. That's not the accent of the people in Bronx or Brooklyn, or at least not the majority of them. All right, it's completely not their accent. So that's number one. Number two, this quote unquote intense interaction. Like I said, I don't know what the hell that means, but let's look at the history between Latinos and black people, right? We can look at some of the stuff that's going on now with a lot of these cops that are getting off for killing black people are actually Hispanics. We can look at these George Zimmermans, right? We can also look at a lot of Hispanic countries. We can look at any country. I want to say Venezuela, but Venezuela is not that bad, at least not anymore. But we can look at a lot of these countries that have black people in them. Argentina, they did a purge of black people. Brazil is extremely racist, even though that's not a Spanish Latin country, it's still a Latin country. There's extreme racism going on in Brazil against black people. Any Latin American country where there's a black population, the black people are treated just as bad, if not worse, than they're treated in America. All right, so that's number one. So even in their own countries, Latinos have very racist ideals towards black people. Hell, when they come here, you can find a lot of videos on YouTube. You can see George Lopez joking about it, and George Lopez joked about it because it's true, where Latinos talk about how their parents are very, very much against them marrying or being in relationships with black people based on racism. Okay, so that's two things right there. So we have these quote unquote intense interactions in Latin countries with Latino people, and they're racist towards us. We have many Latino people who come here and harbor racist attitudes towards us. That's why if many Latinos are honest, they will tell you, especially younger ones, they will tell you that their parents, their grandparents, or their aunts and uncles have very racist things to say towards black people. And if they bring a black person home, They may not say it to the black person's face, but as soon as the black person leaves, they're going to say mayate this, mayate that, racism, racist thing this, racist thing that, right? Hell, even when Floyd Mayweather beats a Hispanic boxer, you see Hispanic people getting all on the internet, getting all on Twitter, saying racist things. So this alleged intense interaction does not lead to Latinos imitating us beyond them wanting to say the N-word. My nigga. That's the only time they really want to imitate us, is when they want to find justification and protection to say the N-word. But any other time that we're in quote-unquote intense interactions with them, they are racist towards us. They are not quote-unquote imitating us or using our voices, especially not in New York, where we don't even have an accent like that. So that's number one. That's part of debunking this nonsense that they're trying to push out with her. These quote unquote intense interactions, and they're just imitating black people because that's their real voice, because they've been around black people so long and they're so close with black people that now they talk like us, which is complete BS. It's complete BS. All right. So all of this, she's switching because she's doing code switching, is simply not true. She's on the job. And I want to read actually a tweet from Phil from Advise Show. And Mr. Phil, he's a good dude for the most part. He has a clear understanding of white supremacy, and he says a lot of good things on his channel. If you don't know who he is, just look up Advise Show on YouTube, or Advise Show Media is what he's called on Twitter. And I want to point him out because he actually defended her, and he was one of the first people I saw that put out this code switching narrative. And I want to say this about him, even though I think he's an overall good brother, and the fact that he shows an understanding of white supremacy is what makes this even more egregious, is because he does understand white supremacy. So he should know better than to defend this woman. But let me go ahead and read what he said to defend her. Everyone is talking about this clip. And this is me reading his tweet. Everyone is talking about this clip from AOC, and that's her abbreviation on Twitter is AOC, Alexandra Ocasio Cortez. But let me finish reading the tweet. Everyone is talking about this clip from AOC. What she's doing is code switching. Black Americans are forced to do this daily on our jobs. There was a recent movie on the same subject of code switching called Sorry to Bother You. Sure, she doesn't talk this way on her job. Do you? Here's the problem. Even that movie, Sorry to Bother You, yes, it was about code switching and the black man going on the job and switching to a white voice. But again, as I just spent time explaining, she was on the job switching to an unprofessional voice. Y'all trying to make it sound like she was in her living room, she was in her backyard, she was at her family reunion talking like this. She was not. She was in a professional setting, in a public setting, saying these things. All right, she was not in a private setting. She was not in her room. She was not in her bedroom. She was not talking. She was not on the phone with her cousin. She was she was at a political rally as a congressperson, doing what politicians do, which is, rev people up to come out and vote for upcoming elections and to galvanize them to support the party or support a particular politician. She was on the job. Mr. Phil, this is why, or not Mr. Phil, but just in general, this is why we don't, because one problem with Mr. Phil, and I don't really talk about this, and I'm talking about on social media or anywhere else, because I don't really care. But in this case, I have to point it out. This is why some black people have problems with people who date interracially. Mr. Phil's wife is not black, all right? She's clearly not black. Now, I've heard some people say that she is, but she's not. If you look at her appearance, she's most likely, now I don't know for sure, she could be an Arab or something else, but she's most likely a Latina or of some sort of Latino or Hispanic origin, right? She is not a black person. She is of some sort of Hispanic origin. Let me just go ahead and clear this up too. Hispanic is not a race, it's an ethnicity. That's why if you fill out census form and other forms, Hispanic is an ethnicity, and then you still have to fill out your race. There's white Hispanics, there's black Hispanics, and there's mestizo slash Hispanic, slash Native American Hispanics, right? But so Hispanic is technically not a race. Neither is Latino, but hey, it's a little bit closer to it because Latino is people from Latin countries. It's still not a race, but it's more so indicating a race than Hispanic, which Hispanic means you're from a Spanish-speaking country. All right. Mr. Phil's wife appears to be somebody of that origin. So this is why we have a problem with interracial dating, or some people do, is because whenever you interracially date, you become compromised. And for Mr. Phil to defend this woman and say that she's code switching when she's clearly not, this shows the problem with dating interracial. Is because once you date interracial, you become compromised, and you become a lot of times unable to fight for black people, or unable to fully fight for black people, especially when it comes to somebody that's the same race of your partner violating black people. And that's exactly what Mr. Phil is doing here, and that's exactly why he's showing that it's a problem, and it makes it especially egregious, because it'd be one thing if he was a person in an interracial relationship who showed no understanding of white supremacy, no understanding of racism, but this brother, his history shows that he understands racism and white supremacy. So for him to defend this woman is double wrong, because he knows better. If anybody knows better, Phil from Advice Show, you know better than to defend this woman, but you did anyway, most likely because your wife is the same ethnicity as her, so you felt the need to cape for her, right? But let me focus on some of the stuff he said. What she's doing is code switching. Black people are forced to do this on our daily, on our jobs. She was on her job, but she was not code switching. She was doing the opposite of code switching. This would even apply to a black person. If a black person talk proper normally, and then all of a sudden switch to an unprofessional voice on the job, that's not code switching. That's the opposite of code switching. And it's the same thing for her. She switched to an unprofessional voice on the job. That's not code switching. But anyway, fam, I don't want to make this video too much longer. It's actually kind of gone on longer than I intended it to anyway. But I just want to make the point. This woman is not code switching. She's being a blatant, pandering racist. Oh, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about too was she always goes out of her way to portray herself as Jenny from the block. But Yvette Carnell, and I'm going to put her link in the video that Yvette Carnell did, the link to her video in the description box too, because she kind of broke down and exposed this woman. This woman is not from the block. This woman is from a very rich Latino father. So when she talks about her being a bartender and all this stuff, there are some rich white kids who have bartender jobs when they're teenagers and young kids and all of that stuff. There are plenty of people who have the rich people who have jobs that are not six-figure jobs when they're younger. Okay? When you're in college, you don't have your degree yet. Even rich kids will sometimes work as a waiter or a waitress. And I'm not talking about rich like millionaire children, but maybe you come from a family or parents who made several $100,000 a year. Sometimes kids who come from those families will do normal jobs. Even sometimes millionaire kids, if their parents are kind of hardcore and want to make them have to, experience what it's like to have to earn your own way, they'll make them work menial jobs, right? So just because you worked a menial job doesn't mean you come from us. Because she loves throwing up, if you heard in that first clip, oh, I was a bartender, so it's okay for you black people to be servants and be in these servant economies. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm not denigrating black people who have jobs like that, but at the same time, it's not okay to normalize that for us. That's racist too, to normalize jobs of servitude for us, which is what she was also doing, trying to normalize servitude jobs for us, which is not okay. All right, that's racist. Like I said, I'm not downing people who have those jobs, but to try to normalize it for us and try to make it seem like it's okay to accept being stuck in that position, in servitude positions, the position that we've been stuck in since slavery, to try to normalize that and tell black people it's okay, or try to encourage that type of mentality among us, that is a problem, okay? That is part of the problem. So I just want to point that out. Like, that's part of the problem, is that trying to normalize that job, trying to normalize those kind of jobs is racist towards us. That's number one. So this whole, or her trying to portray herself as Jenny from the block, it's false. She's not. She comes from a very wealthy father who owns some sort of construction company or something. I don't know all the details, so let me not speak on it, but I'm going to put the link to Yvette Carnell's description, or the link to Yvette Carnell's video in the description box along with that article, so that you guys can listen for yourself and hear Yvette Carnell break her down and expose how she's not really from the block. So she goes out of her way to portray herself as from the block, Jenny from the block. She's not, all right? She's not. She's from a rich area, and she probably didn't do that much interacting with black people. That's number two, All right, but if she did, because if she did, she probably wouldn't have switched to that damn accent if she did do interacting with black people. But that, along with her father's background of him having a lot of money, those two things don't link up to her being Jenny from the block. All right, first of all, her pandering towards black people, and then her background. So that's one thing too. And another thing, and that's the last thing I want to address, is the suspected white supremacist. He tried to use the black people in the crowd, because you could hear the black people in the crowd saying, "Go on, girl, go on, girl," or and then there was some dude, you could hear his voice talking about sound like a preacher, like, "Yes, ma'am," or whatever he said. But you could hear the cheering from some of the black people in the crowd. But let me say something about the black people in this crowd. As I've been pointing out, or as I've pointed out in this video, and I probably will point out in other videos, white liberals can be just as racist as white conservatives, right? These black people, unfortunately, they're coons. They're black people who have been brainwashed by the mainstream media, by the liberal media, to follow Democrats, to run up under Democrats, to accept anything that sounds like any nice thing that a white liberal says, because white liberals play the good cop to the Republicans' bad cop, even though they both have the same basic attitude and goals towards black people or for black people. The Democrats are the good cop and the Republicans are the bad cop, right? And we all know the good cop, bad cop strategy. They're both cops. They both have the same goal. It's just that the bad cop comes at you hard, and then the good cop comes at you nice, and then they're trying to see which tactic works on you. And then it's the fact that both of them are coming at you, that you're going to give in to one of them. If you're someone who gives in more to kindness, after you get hit with the bad cop, when the good cop comes in, their kindness is going to make you confess to the crime, right? And then, but both cops are trying to throw you in jail, or vice versa. Maybe if you don't respond to kindness nicely, maybe when the bad cop hits you with it hard, maybe then you'll confess. But still, the two cops are working together. They're just playing two different roles to play a psychological game with you. And that's what Republicans and Democrats do to us. And these are black people who fall for the good cop routine. All right, their thought patterns are shaped by the mainstream media, and they're just, unfortunately, coons, sambos, whatever you want to call it, for white liberals instead of white Democrats. So this white liberal tries to prop up these black people. Hey, look at the black people in the crowd cheering for her, which is no different than a white conservative saying, "Hey, I'm not racist. Look, Larry Elder agrees with me. You black people are lazy. Hey, Candace Owens agrees with me. You black people are lazy." Which this white liberal would probably call out a white conservative for using black people as props, for using a Candace Owens or a Larry Elder as a prop to promote his racism. A lot of white liberals will call that out. Hey, you're racist, and you're just using this black person to promote your racism. Well, hey, it's the same thing with this. This white liberal writing this article and using the black people in the crowd as a way to defend or prop up Miss Cortez's words is nothing but using them as props, in the same way that a white Republican uses a Candace Owens or a Larry Elder or a Sheriff Clark to hide their racism behind. You use a black person to spout your ideals. Use a black coon, you use a black Sambo to spout your ideals, and then you hide behind them because you say, "I'm not racist, he said it. I'm not racist, she said it." It's the same thing that these white liberals are doing. Hey, Miss Cortez isn't racist. Listen to the black people in the crowd, which is a bunch of nonsense. And I don't want to hear it, because once again, you doing that, using those black people to defend her, those black people in the crowd to defend her, using them as props and human shields to defend a racist. It's the same thing that white conservatives do. But anyway, fam, that's pretty much it for the video. Miss Cortez is not code switching. She's being a pandering racist. She's not Jenny from the block. If she was, she maybe would have known better than to use that voice. But clearly, she's not, based on her background and based on her racist pandering. She's just another Democrat that wants to mislead black people into policies that don't help us, that don't improve our condition, get us to vote for her, and DACA policies and LGBTQ policies and policies for women, which are really for white women. All policies that are for specific groups, because DACA is for dreamers, which doesn't help black people. I'm not a dreamer, so that doesn't help me. But when I ask for a specific policy for me, I'm a racist. I'm wrong. I'm evil for not including everybody. I can't ask for reparations because that doesn't include everybody. but you can ask for DACA, which doesn't include everybody. You can ask for women's acts that doesn't include everybody, because I'm a man, so that don't include me. You can ask for LGBTQ acts that don't include me, because I'm not a homosexual, etc., 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 right? So you could ask for specific policies for every other quote-unquote oppressed group except black people. When it comes to us, that's not fair to everybody else, and you need to include everybody else in your policies, right? And that's all she is, another anti-black liberal racist. Nothing more, nothing less. And anybody defending her is either anti-black liberal racists themselves, or if they're not white, they're a wannabe white supremacist, or if they're black, they're another wannabe white supremacist, or at the very best, there's some pandering Sambo who is trying to cape for her because they like Latina draws or Latino draws, if depending on their gender or sexual orientation, right? So that's all that is. Nothing more, nothing less. This is racism. Alexandra Ocasio Cortez was not code switching. This is why we don't trust you. This is why you're basically canceled, ma'am. Unless you come out supporting a full reparations package, a $14 trillion reparations package for black Americans, I'm going to consider you racist, and you'll never have my vote, especially if you ever run for a national office. You can keep running for your little district, and you may or may not keep winning, but if you ever run for an election that I can vote in, I won't be voting for you. Not unless you come supporting reparations of $14 trillion or more. Otherwise, I'm not supporting you because I don't trust you. But anyway, I digress, fam. I made this video a lot longer than I thought, so all my videos are a lot longer than I thought. But anyway, that's another video. Like, share, subscribe. Peace.